The ground shook as another explosion tore through the ruined city. Smoke filled the air, thick and black, blocking out the pale sun of the alien world. One pressed his back against a broken wall and tried to catch his breath. His rifle was low on charge, his armor was cracked, and he had lost contact with his squad 3 hours ago. The war between humans and had been going on for 2 years now. Nobody remembered who fired first anymore. It did not matter. All that mattered was survival. There were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. Their eyes glowed faintly orange, and they were fierce warriors. They showed no mercy to humans, and humans showed none to them. One was just a soldier. He was 26 years old, born on Earth in a small town near the coast. He had joined the military because he wanted to protect his family. Now he was stuck on a battlefield thousands of light years from home, and he was not sure if he would ever see them again. He moved carefully through the rubble. The sounds of battle were getting quieter. Either the fighting was moving away or both sides had killed each other. He needed to find a way back to base. He needed to survive. A soft sound made him freeze. It was not the sound of weapons or explosions. It was something else, something small and weak. One raised his rifle and moved toward the noise. His heart pounded in his chest. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every corner could mean death. He climbed over a pile of broken stone and looked down. There, in a hole between the ruins, was a child. One blinked. The child she was small, maybe the size of a human 5-year-old, but her gray skin and 4 arms made her identity clear. Her orange eyes looked up at him with pure terror. She was covered in dust and blood, and one of her arms hung at a strange angle, broken. For a long moment, neither of them moved. One had killed many. He had seen his friends die at their hands. He had every reason to hate this species with all his heart. And now, one of their young sat before him, helpless and afraid. His training told him to move on. She was the enemy. She would grow up to kill humans. Leaving her was the smart thing to do. But something inside him refused to listen. The child made a small sound. It was not a word he could understand, but he knew what it meant. She was crying. She was scared. She was just a child who wanted her mother. One lowered his rifle. He did not know why he did it. Maybe he was tired of all the death. Maybe he remembered his own little sister back on Earth. Maybe he just could not look at a scared child and walk away. He knelt down slowly. The child pressed herself deeper into the hole, trying to get away from him. Her uninjured arms covered her face. "Hey," one said softly. He knew she could not understand him, but he hoped his voice would calm her. "It is okay. I am not going to hurt you." He held up his empty hands. No weapon, no threat. The child peeked at him through her fingers. Her orange eyes were wet with tears. One pointed at himself. "One," he said. Then he pointed at her and tilted his head. She did not answer. Of course she did not. She was terrified. He looked around. The area was quiet for now, but that could change at any moment. If human soldiers found him with a child, they would think he had lost his mind. If soldiers found them, they would kill him without asking questions. He had to make a choice. One took off his helmet and set it aside. He wanted her to see his face. He wanted her to see that he was not a monster. Then he slowly reached into his pack and pulled out a small ration bar. He broke it in half and held one piece out to her. The child stared at the food. She was clearly hungry. After a long moment, she reached out with one shaking hand and took it. She sniffed it carefully, then took a tiny bite. One smiled a little. "Good, right?" She looked at him again. The fear in her eyes was still there, but something else had appeared too. Confusion. She did not understand why this human was being kind to her. He did not fully understand it either. One ate his half of the bar while watching the sky. The smoke was starting to clear. That meant aircraft might come soon. He needed to move. He looked at the child's broken arm. The bone was not sticking out, but it was clearly damaged. She needed medical help. Without treatment, she could lose the arm, or worse. He had basic medical supplies in his pack, just enough to stop bleeding and wrap wounds, nothing for broken bones, but he could at least make a simple support to keep her arm from moving too much. He pulled out some bandages and a flat piece of metal from a broken piece of equipment. Working carefully, he made a basic splint and showed it to her. She pulled back, afraid. "I know," he said gently. "It will hurt, but I need to help you. Your arm is broken." He mimicked the action of wrapping, then pointed at her arm. The child looked at her injury, then back at him. She was smart. She understood. Slowly, she held out her broken arm. One worked as carefully as he could. When he touched the injury, she cried out in pain. The sound cut through him like a knife, but he kept working. He straightened the arm as much as he dared and wrapped the splint around it tightly. When he finished, the child was breathing hard. Tears ran down her gray cheeks, but she did not pull away from him anymore. "There," one said, "all done." He sat back and wiped the sweat from his face. What was he doing? He was in the middle of enemy territory, alone with an injured alien child. His commanders would call him a traitor. His friends would call him crazy. But when the child looked up at him with those big orange eyes, he did not care about any of that. She needed help, and he was the only one who could give it. A distant boom reminded him that the war was still going on. He could not stay here. He needed to find safety. And somehow, he needed to figure out what to do with this child. He stood up and held out his hand. "Come on," he said, "we need to go." The child hesitated. Then slowly, she reached up with her good hand and took his. Her fingers were thin and cool, nothing like a human child's hand. But the trust in her grip was the same. It was the trust of someone who had no one else to turn to. One helped her out of the hole and lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected. He held her carefully, keeping her broken arm protected. "Hold on tight," he whispered. "I am going to get you somewhere safe." He did not know where that was yet. He did not know how he would survive the next hour, let alone the next day. But he made a silent promise to himself. He would protect this child, no matter what. The war had taken everything from him. His friends, his peace, his innocence. But it would not take his humanity. It would not turn him into the kind of person who could leave a scared child to die. One started walking through the ruins, carrying the enemy's daughter in his arms. And for the first time in 2 years, he felt like he was fighting for something that truly mattered. One moved through the destroyed city like a ghost. He stayed low, kept to the shadows, and avoided open ground. Every step was careful. Every breath was quiet. The child in his arms made no sound at all. She seemed to understand that silence meant survival. The sun was setting. The pale orange light made everything look strange and unreal. On this planet, the days were short and the nights were cold. One needed to find shelter before darkness fell completely. He looked down at the child. Her eyes were half closed and her body was limp against his chest. She was exhausted. The pain from her broken arm and the fear of everything she had been through had drained all her energy. "Stay with me," he whispered, "just a little longer." She blinked up at him but did not respond. One turned a corner and stopped. Ahead of him in the middle of the street lay the bodies of soldiers. Some were human, some were. They had killed each other in a fight that had ended hours ago. Now they just lay there, empty and still. He looked away and kept moving. He had seen too many dead bodies to feel shocked anymore. But he did not want the child to see them. He shifted her in his arms so her face was pressed against his shoulder. "Do not look," he said softly. She buried her face deeper into his shirt. After another hour of walking, one found a small building that was mostly intact. It looked like it had been a shop of some kind before the war. The windows were broken, but the walls were solid. It would have to do. He carried the child inside and set her down on a clear spot on the floor. She winced when her broken arm shifted, but she did not cry. She was tougher than she looked. One pulled out his flashlight and checked the building. Empty. No enemies, no bodies, no traps, just dust and broken glass. He returned to the child and knelt beside her. Her skin looked pale and she was shivering. He took off his jacket and wrapped it around her small body. "Cold?" he asked. She looked at him with those orange eyes. She still did not understand his words, but she understood his actions. She pulled the jacket around herself and nodded slightly. One smiled. "Good, you understand nodding, that helps." He searched through his pack and found another ration bar. He broke it in half again and gave the bigger piece to her. She took it without hesitation this time. The fear in her eyes was starting to fade. Trust was slowly taking its place. While she ate, one checked his equipment. His radio was dead. His rifle had maybe 3 shots left. His water bottle was half full, not enough to last long. He needed to make contact with someone, anyone, but calling for human help meant putting the child in danger. They would not understand. They might even try to kill her. Calling for help was even more dangerous. They would definitely kill him. There was one other option, a neutral zone about 20 kilometers east. Both sides had agreed to keep that area free from fighting. If he could get there, he might be able to hand the child over safely. 20 kilometers with an injured child, through enemy territory. One rubbed his face and sighed. It seemed impossible, but so did everything else. The child finished eating and looked at him. She made a small sound and pointed at his hand. He looked down and realized he was still holding his half of the ration bar. He had forgotten to eat. He lifted the food to his mouth, but she made another sound and pushed his hand back toward her. "No," he said gently. "This one is mine. You already had yours." She tilted her head, not understanding. One pointed at her, then at the wrapper in her hand. "Yours." Then he pointed at himself and the bar in his hand. "Mine." She watched him closely. Then slowly she nodded. He ate his food while she watched. When he finished, she seemed satisfied. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. Within minutes, she was asleep. One sat in the darkness and watched over her. He could not sleep. Not yet. Someone had to keep guard. As he sat there, he thought about his life before the war. He thought about his mother cooking dinner in their small kitchen. He thought about his father teaching him to fish by the river. He thought about his little sister, Me, and how she used to follow him everywhere. What would they think if they saw him now, protecting an enemy child in the ruins of a dead city? His mother would understand. She had always told him that kindness was the most important thing a person could show, even to strangers, even to enemies. His father might be angry at first, but he would come around. He had taught one to do what was right, even when it was hard. And Me, she would probably hug the child and try to teach her games. One smiled at the thought. The night grew colder. He could see his breath in the dim light. He moved closer to the child and sat beside her, not touching but close enough to share warmth. She stirred in her sleep and made a soft sound. It sounded like a word, but he could not understand it. Maybe she was calling for her mother. Where was her mother? Was she alive? Was she searching for her daughter right now? One hoped so. Every child deserved a mother who loved them, even a child. The sound of engines made him freeze. He pressed himself against the wall and peered through a crack in the window. Outside, a human patrol vehicle was driving slowly down the street. Its lights swept across the buildings, searching for survivors or enemies. One's heart pounded. If they found him, they would want to know why he was here. They would see the child. They would ask questions he could not answer. He moved quickly. He picked up the child, still wrapped in his jacket, and carried her to the back of the building. There was a small storage room with no windows. He slipped inside and closed the door. The child woke up. Her eyes went wide with fear. "Quiet," one whispered. He pressed a finger to his lips. She understood. She went completely still. Outside, the vehicle stopped. One heard doors open, footsteps, voices. "Check that building." His blood went cold. He looked around the storage room. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run. If they opened this door, it was over. The child looked up at him. Her eyes asked a question she could not speak. "Are we going to be okay?" One did not know the answer, but he held her and made a silent promise. "I will not let them hurt you." The footsteps came closer. The front door of the shop creaked open. A flashlight beam swept through the main room. "Empty," a voice said. "Check the back." Footsteps approached the storage room. The child pressed her face against one's chest. He could feel her heart beating fast. His own heart was doing the same. The door handle moved. One held his breath. Then a radio crackled outside. "All units, we have contact 2 blocks north. Move to support." The footsteps stopped. "Let us go," the voice said. "We will check this area later." The footsteps retreated. The front door closed. The vehicle engine started, and then the sound faded into the distance. One let out a long breath. His whole body was shaking. He had been seconds away from being discovered. The child looked up at him again. This time her eyes held something different, not fear, not confusion. Gratitude. She had understood what just happened. She knew he could have given her up to save himself. He could have handed her over to his own people and walked away free. But he had not. He had protected her. One smiled weakly. "That was close, right?" She nodded. He laughed softly. It was a tired, broken laugh, but it was real. "You know what? I think you are starting to understand me." She made a small sound. It might have been her way of laughing too. They stayed in the storage room until dawn. One did not sleep at all. He just sat there, holding the child, watching the door. When the first light of morning crept through the cracks in the walls, he stood up and stretched his tired muscles. "Time to go," he said. The child held up her arms. She wanted him to carry her. One picked her up and settled her against his hip. She wrapped her good arms around his neck and rested her head on his shoulder. 20 kilometers to the neutral zone. It seemed like a million miles, but he would walk every step if he had to. Because some things were worth fighting for, and this small, scared child was one of them. The journey to the neutral zone took 3 days. 3 days of walking through ruins and hiding from patrols. 3 days of sharing food and water that was never enough. 3 days of watching over a child who had started to trust him completely. One was exhausted. His legs ached. His eyes burned from lack of sleep. But every time he thought about stopping, he looked at the child in his arms. She needed him. He could not give up. On the first day, they had nearly been caught by a scout. One had hidden in a collapsed building, pressing himself and the child into a dark corner. The scout had walked right past them, close enough to touch. But the child had stayed perfectly silent, her small hands gripping his shirt. On the second day, they had run out of food. One had found some water in an abandoned vehicle, but there was nothing to eat. His stomach growled constantly. The child looked up at him with worried eyes, and he smiled to hide his pain. "We will find food soon," he told her. "Do not worry." She nodded, trusting him completely. By the third day, one could see the neutral zone in the distance. It was marked by tall white flags that flew on both sides of the border. Neither humans nor were allowed to fight there. It was one of the few rules both sides still followed. He stopped at the edge of a hill and looked down at the peaceful valley below. After everything he had been through, it seemed unreal. A place without war, a place without death. The child stirred in his arms. She had been sleeping, but now she was awake. She looked at the white flags and made a curious sound. "That is where we are going," one said. "You will be safe there." She looked at him, then back at the valley. She did not seem happy. One understood. She did not want to leave him. Over the past 3 days, they had formed a bond that went beyond language. He was the only thing standing between her and a universe that wanted to hurt her. But he could not keep her. He was a human soldier. She was a child. There was no future where they could stay together. He started walking down the hill toward the neutral zone. The guards at the border were members of a peacekeeping force. They were neither human nor but from a third species called the. They were tall and thin, with blue skin and calm eyes. They existed only to keep the peace and help those caught in the crossfire. When one approached with the child in his arms, 2 guards stepped forward. Their expressions showed surprise. "Human soldier," one of them said in accented English, "you carry a child." One nodded. "I found her in the ruins. She is injured and needs help." The guards looked at each other. This was clearly not something they had expected. "You wish to surrender her to our care?" the other guard asked. "No," one said. "I want you to contact the. Tell them I have one of their children. Tell them I want to return her to her family." The guards were silent for a long moment. "This is unusual," the first guard said. "Human soldiers do not normally show mercy to young." One felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. "She is just a child. She has done nothing wrong." The guards nodded slowly. They seemed to respect his answer. "Come," the second guard said. "We will send a message to the fleet." They led him into the neutral zone, past tents and medical stations where wounded from both sides were being treated. Humans and, lying in beds just meters apart, too tired and hurt to fight. The child clung to one as they walked. Her eyes darted around, taking in all the strange sights. She had probably never seen humans and existing peacefully before. They stopped at a communication tent. One of the guards spoke into a device in a language one did not understand. Then they waited. An hour passed, then 2. One sat on a bench outside the tent, still holding the child. She had fallen asleep again, her head resting on his shoulder. He watched her breathing and felt a strange sadness growing in his chest. Soon she would be gone, back to her people, back to a life where humans were the enemy. Would she remember him? Would she remember the human soldier who had carried her through the ruins and kept her safe? He hoped so. A sound made him look up. In the sky, a shuttle was descending. It was sleek and dark, marked with symbols he did not recognize. The guard stepped forward as it landed. The doors of the shuttle opened and soldiers stepped out. They were tall and armed, their orange eyes scanning the area with distrust. Behind them came another figure. She was female, taller than the soldiers, and her gray skin had a faint blue tint that marked her as someone important. Her 4 arms were decorated with golden bands, and her orange eyes burned with intensity. This was no ordinary, this was someone with power. She walked forward, and her eyes found the child in one's arms. For a moment, everything stopped. The child stirred and woke. She turned her head and saw the female. Her eyes went wide. She made a sound, a word, one word that one had never heard her say before. The female's expression changed. The cold intensity melted away, replaced by something raw and desperate. She rushed forward, and her soldiers moved to stop one, thinking he might be a threat. But one did not fight. He gently lifted the child and held her out. The female took her daughter into all 4 of her arms. She held her tight, making soft sounds that were clearly words of love and relief. The child buried her face in her mother's neck and cried. One watched them. Despite everything, he smiled. This was what he had been fighting for. Not war, not victory, just this moment. A mother reunited with her child. After a long moment, the female looked at him. Her orange eyes studied his face. "You," she said in rough English, "you are the one who saved her." It was not a question. "Yes," one said simply. She held her daughter closer. The soldiers behind her looked tense, ready to attack at any moment, but she raised one hand and they stopped. "Why?" she asked. You are human, we are enemies. Why did you save my child? One thought about the question. There were many answers he could give, because it was right, because she was innocent, because he still believed in kindness. But in the end, he just said, because she needed help. The female stared at him for a long moment. Her expression was impossible to read. Then she looked down at her daughter, who was now looking back at one with sad eyes. The child reached out one small hand toward him. One stepped forward and took it gently, her thin fingers wrapped around his. Be good, he said softly. Listen to your mother. The child made a small sound. It might have been goodbye. The female watched this exchange. Something shifted in her eyes. Not warmth, not yet, but something close to it. I am, she said, commander of the Fourth Fleet. I will remember what you have done today, human. One nodded. I am one, just a soldier. Looked at him one last time. Then she turned and walked back to her shuttle, carrying her daughter. The soldiers followed, casting suspicious glances at one as they left. The child watched him over her mother's shoulder until the shuttle doors closed. Then they were gone. One stood there for a long time, staring at the empty sky. The guards approached him. That was bravely done, one of them said. One did not feel brave. He felt empty. He had done the right thing, but it had cost him something he could not name. He turned and walked back toward the human side of the neutral zone. He needed to report in. He needed to face whatever consequences were waiting for him. But as he walked, he thought about words. I will remember what you have done today. He did not know what that meant. He did not know if it meant anything at all. But somewhere in the galaxy, a mother was holding her child, and that was enough. For now, that was enough. Sat alone in her quarters, staring at the wall. Her daughter was safe now. She was sleeping in the medical bay, her broken arm properly treated, her body finally at rest. The doctors had said she would make a full recovery, physically at least. But could not stop thinking about the human. She had spent 15 years fighting humans. She had led fleets into battle against them. She had watched her soldiers die at their hands. She had grown to hate them with every part of her being. And yet, one of them had saved her daughter. It did not make sense. Nothing about it made sense. When the message had come from the neutral zone, had not believed it. A human soldier holding a child asking to return her safely. It had to be a trap, a trick, some cruel game to hurt her even more. But it was not. She had seen the truth in the human's eyes. He had carried her daughter through enemy territory, risking his own life, asking for nothing in return. He had been gentle with her, kind. He had protected her when his own people would have called him a traitor for doing so. Why? Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly. Somewhere out there, the war was still going on. Ships were fighting. Soldiers were dying. Nothing had changed. But something inside her had changed. She could feel it, like a crack in her armor that she could not repair. She thought about what her daughter had told her. In broken words and simple gestures, the child had described her time with the human. How he had given her food when he had none. How he had wrapped her arms so carefully. How he had held her through the cold nights and whispered words she could not understand but that made her feel safe. The child did not hate the human, she loved him. And that terrified more than anything. A knock at her door made her turn. Enter, she said. One of her officers stepped in. His name was, and he had served with her for years. He was loyal and smart, but right now his face showed concern. Commander, he said, the council wants to speak with you. Nodded. She had been expecting this. News of her journey to the neutral zone had spread quickly. The High Council did not like commanders making unauthorized trips, especially not to retrieve children from human soldiers. I will contact them shortly, she said. Hesitated. Commander, may I speak freely? You may. He stepped closer. The crew is talking. They do not understand why you let the human go. He was alone, unarmed. We could have taken him prisoner. We could have gotten information from him. His orange eyes narrowed. You think I should have captured the man who saved my daughter? Looked uncomfortable. I think many would say it was the strategic choice. Many would be wrong. She walked past him to the door. The human showed my daughter mercy when he had every reason to let her die. He walked through fire and death to bring her to safety. Capturing him would not have been strategic. It would have been monstrous. Did not argue, he simply bowed his head. Yes, Commander. Left her quarters and walked through the corridors of her ship. Soldiers saluted as she passed, but she barely noticed. Her mind was elsewhere. She had told the human she would remember what he had done, but remembering was not enough. She needed to understand. For years she had been taught that humans were savage creatures. They were cruel, selfish, and cared only for themselves. They had started this war. They had attacked first. They were the enemy. But if that was true, how could one of them do what one had done? Either everything she believed was wrong, or he was unlike any human she had ever known. She reached the medical bay and stepped inside. Her daughter was awake now, sitting up in bed. When she saw her mother, her face lit up with a smile. Walked to her side and sat down. She took her daughter's small hands in her own. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. "Better," the child said. Her voice was weak but clear. "My arm does not hurt anymore." Nodded. The doctors had done good work, but there was something else she needed to ask. "The human who saved you," she said carefully. "Tell me more about him." The child's eyes grew thoughtful. "He was kind, Mother. He gave me food even when he was hungry. He kept me warm when it was cold. He never hurt me." "Did he speak to you?" "Yes, I did not understand his words, but his voice was gentle." The child paused. He was scared sometimes, but he never let the fear stop him. Felt the crack in her armor grow wider. "Do you think all humans are like him?" she asked. The child thought about it. "I do not know, but I think he was special." Special, yes, that was the word. One was special. He had done something that most would not do for a human child. He had shown compassion where there should have been only hatred. What kind of person did that? And why could she not stop thinking about him? The door to the medical bay opened and appeared again. "Commander, the council is waiting." Squeezed her daughter's hands one last time. "Rest now. I will return soon." She walked to the communication room and activated the screen. 5 faces appeared, the members of the High Council. Their expressions ranged from curious to disapproving. "Commander," the eldest council member said, "you retrieved your daughter from the enemy. We are pleased she is safe." "Thank you," said. "However," another council member added, "we are troubled by reports that you allowed the human soldier to go free. Is this true?" "It is." The council members exchanged glances. "Why?" the eldest asked. "He was alone and vulnerable. He could have provided valuable intelligence." Took a deep breath. She had prepared for this question. "The human saved my daughter's life," she said. "He risked everything to bring her to safety. He asked for nothing in return. Capturing him would have been a violation of the honor he showed." "Honor?" a younger council member scoffed. "Humans have no honor, they are animals." This one was different. The council fell silent. They were not used to hearing such words from one of their best commanders. The eldest council member leaned forward. "You speak as if you respect this human." Paused. Did she respect him? She had hated humans for so long that the idea seemed impossible. But when she thought about one, she did not feel hatred. She felt something else, something she could not name. "I do not know what I feel," she said honestly. "But I know that what he did was not the act of an animal. It was the act of someone with a soul." The council members looked at each other again. "This is troubling," the eldest said. "The war depends on our soldiers believing that humans are the enemy. If they hear that a commander showed mercy to one of them, it could damage morale." "Or," said quietly, It could make them question why we are fighting in the first place. The words hung in the air like a forbidden thought. The eldest council member's eyes narrowed. "Be careful, Commander. You walk a dangerous path." "I know," said, "but perhaps it is time someone walked it." She ended the transmission and stood in the darkness of the communication room. She had said too much, she knew that. The council would be watching her now, waiting for her to make a mistake. But she did not regret her words. Somewhere out there, a human soldier named One had done something that changed her view of the universe. She needed to understand why. And there was only one way to do that. She needed to find him. 6 months had passed since One returned his rifle and walked away from the war. His commanders had not punished him for saving the child. In fact, they had barely spoken to him about it at all. They had given him a medical discharge and sent him home. The official reason was psychological stress. The unofficial reason was that they did not know what to do with a soldier who showed mercy to the enemy. Now he lived in a small apartment on a space station far from the front lines. He worked in a repair shop, fixing broken machines for people who did not ask questions. It was quiet work, lonely work, but it was better than killing. He still thought about the child every day. Her big orange eyes, her thin fingers wrapped around his, the way she had looked at him when they said goodbye. He wondered if she ever thought about him too. One evening he was walking home from work when he noticed something strange. People on the street were staring at the sky. Some were pointing, some were running. One looked up. A shuttle was descending toward the station. His heart stopped. Ships did not come to human stations, not unless they were attacking. But this ship was not firing, it was not even armed. It was flying slowly, carefully, as if trying not to scare anyone. Security forces rushed to meet it. Sirens blared. Announcements told everyone to stay calm and get inside. But One did not move. He stood in the middle of the street, watching the shuttle land. The doors opened. Stepped out. She was alone this time. No soldiers, no guards, just her, tall and powerful, her 4 arms at her sides, her orange eyes scanning the crowd until they found him. She walked toward him. The security forces tried to stop her, but she raised one hand. "I am not here to fight," she said in English. "I am here to speak with one person." The guards hesitated. They looked at One, confused. Stopped a few meters away from him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You are a hard man to find," she said finally. One swallowed. "I was not hiding." "No, but you were not trying to be found either." She took another step closer. The guards tensed, but One waved them back. If she wanted to kill him, she would have done it already. "Why are you here?" he asked. Was quiet for a moment. "I have asked myself the same question many times. I have been asking it for 6 months." She looked at him with those burning orange eyes. "You saved my daughter. You carried her through war and death when you could have left her to die. You showed her kindness when you had no reason to." One nodded slowly. "I remember." "I have fought humans for 15 years, continued. "I have killed many. I have watched many of my own die. I thought I understood what humans were. I thought I knew my enemy." She paused, "But I did not know you." One did not know what to say. He had never expected to see her again. He had certainly never expected her to come looking for him. "I came here to understand," said. "I need to know why you did what you did. I need to know what kind of creature saves the child of its enemy." One thought about the question. He had asked himself the same thing many times. "I do not know if I can explain it," he said slowly. "When I found her, she was just a scared child. She was hurt and alone. It did not matter that she was. It did not matter that her people were my enemy. She was a child who needed help." He met eyes. "Where I come from, we have a saying. The measure of a person is not how they treat their friends. It is how they treat those who cannot help them. Your daughter could not help me. She could not give me anything. But she needed me, and that was enough." stared at him. Her expression was unreadable. "You risked your life for a principle?" she asked. "I risked my life because it was the right thing to do." Was silent for a long time. Around them the crowd had grown. Humans stood watching, whispering among themselves. A commander standing peacefully with a human soldier. It was something no one had ever seen before. "My daughter still speaks of you," said quietly. "She draws pictures of you. She asks when she will see you again." One felt his heart tighten. "She remembers me." "She will never forget you," paused. "Neither will I." She reached into her clothing and pulled out a small object. It was a golden pendant, shaped like a star, with strange symbols carved into it. "This is a mark of honor among my people," she said. "It is given only to those who have shown true courage and nobility. I have never given one to an outsider before." She held it out to him. One hesitated. "I do not need a reward. I did not save your daughter for honor." "I know," said. "That is why you deserve it." Slowly one took the pendant. It was warm in his hand, heavier than it looked. "Step back. The war between our peoples is not over. I cannot end it alone, but I can make a choice about who I want to be." She looked at him with something new in her eyes. Respect, maybe even the beginning of trust. "I want to be someone who recognizes goodness when she sees it," she said. "Even in an enemy, even in a human." One nodded. He understood. The war had made them enemies, but it did not have to define who they were. "What happens now?" he asked. Turned to look at her shuttle. "I return to my fleet. The council is already angry with me for coming here, but I do not care what they think." She looked back at him. "Perhaps one day when this war is finally over, I will find you again. My daughter would like that." One smiled. It was the first real smile he had felt in months. "I would like that too." Nodded once. Then she turned and walked back to her shuttle. The crowd parted for her, too stunned to do anything else. At the door of the shuttle, she paused and looked over her shoulder. "Goodbye, one. Take care of yourself." "Goodbye." She stepped inside, and the doors closed behind her. A moment later, the shuttle lifted off and rose into the sky until it disappeared among the stars. One stood there for a long time, holding the golden pendant in his hand. Around him the crowd slowly dispersed. Life returned to normal, but something had changed, something important. A human and I had stood together in peace, not as enemies, not as friends exactly, but as two people who had found something unexpected in each other. Hoping. The war was not over. It might continue for years, but now there was a crack in the hatred, a small light in the darkness. And small lights had a way of growing. One put the pendant around his neck and walked home. For the first time since the war began, he felt like the future might hold something good. Because he had learned something important. Kindness was never wasted. Even in the darkest times, even when everything seemed hopeless, a single act of compassion could change the universe. He had saved one child. And in doing so, he had planted the seed of something much greater. Peace. It would not come tomorrow, it might not come for years, but someday it would come. And when it did, it would start with moments like this. A human and I standing together, choosing to see each other as something more than enemies. Choosing to be human. One smiled and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, a little girl was drawing pictures of him, and her mother was thinking about a world where the war might finally end. That was enough. For now, that was more than enough.